Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Hockey Writers Roundtable. And we are going to be talking draft day trades as the draft is like a couple days away as we're
Mm.
recording this. And joined in by pretty common guests on the roundtable here, Derek Olsen, Jacob Strozyk, and Jim Bay. Thanks, guys, for coming together again here. And we're going to talk some trades. It's always fun time. Seems like the last week or so, it's felt like the trade deadline. We've got a few big trades that have happened, and the latest one, the Linus Ullmark to the Ottawa Senators. Not as big of a package as kind of expected. Mark Kastelik, first round pick, and then Jonas Korpisalo, which was a real surprise, them taking on that contract. So before we get started with some mock trades and some trades that could happen, I want to talk about that one because it just happened a couple days ago. So I'll start with you, Jim. What did you think about that trade? Was it underwhelming? Was it about right? What did you think about it?
I thought it was about right. It's clearly a situation where Ottawa, I think, got a really nice upgrade at goaltending. Um, Maybe you could get more, or either side you could think always get more in a trade. But I think in that case, I think, each team got something that they really needed. And I think anytime that happens, that ends up being a good trade. I think it's going to benefit um, both of them down the road. But, you're going to hate to see if that little Boston break up that little goaltending duo they
Yeah.
had that were, not only supportive of each other when they had the ups and downs, but all their little things. But, you know, another season, we move on, and something else will happen. But I think in the end, um, that was a pretty decent trade for both sides.
Sure. Jacob, what did you think about the trade? I mean, Jacob Chikrin was apparently talked about as being part of it. That didn't happen. Not real big pieces going the other way. It's the first round pick is the biggest thing. What did you think about that one?
I mean, yeah, underwhelming is definitely a word I would use. I mean, as soon as I saw it announced, I was on Slack messaging Billington about it because, we both cover Atlantic teams, and me covering Buffalo. I instantly think about it and I see Boston or Ottawa making a move, and I'm like, I don't really understand why division rivals are making a move like that. Why is one team really making an improvement move towards the other one so much? Because to me, Allmark really is that good of a
Mhm.
goaltender. So why is Boston really improving Ottawa's goaltending that much and only getting back a late first round pick, arguably only a backup goaltender, because Korpisalo is not going to replace Swayman as the starter by any means. So he's not taking over that job. And then a physical center on top of that. So the return isn't nearly high enough, in my opinion, to justify trading that caliber of a goaltender to a division rival. If they were making that trade to some team out west, sure. I mean, that makes a little bit more sense. But I feel like maybe trying to gouge a division rival for a little bit more, maybe a higher pick. I don't know if they would have been able to maybe get the seventh overall pick out
Yeah.
of them or anything like that, but maybe trying to get next year's first round pick, since it would more than likely be higher than 25th overall. That might have been something they would have been able to swing, or at least a better prospect on top of it. But there's something more I feel like that was
Mhm.
uh, kind of left off the table as opposed to what was gained.
They were talking about Shane Pinto being part of it, that Boston wanted him. Obviously, Ottawa didn't want to trade him there. But Ottawa's got a great goaltender now, and we'll see if it turns out to be that way. It seems like good goaltenders don't do well in Ottawa, even if they are good elsewhere. But we'll see what happens. Derek will move to Jacob Markstrom since he was on the team you cover. Getting finally traded to the New Jersey Devils. What'd you think about the return in that one for the Flames?
I'm personally pretty happy with it. I think basing that off of the Elmark trade too, I think that they got pretty good value back. The first is obviously nice, and there was an interesting stat pointed out. I forget on what social media I saw it on, but I think only one or two goaltenders have been traded for first round picks in the last 5 or 6 years, I think. So to be able to get one, and obviously Ottawa's probably pretty happy there too, if that was I didn't even realize. You'd think a quality goaltender would be an easy first round pick, but I mean, those are trades like that don't happen
Yeah.
anymore. Those are 2000s trades, guys. So no, and obviously Kevin Ball was a person that was very highly talked about in the Calgary in the office, and I'm really pleased to see him in return. 6'6" defensive defenseman is always helpful. You know, we have a lot of more offensive minded guys on the Flames blue line, so I think that'll help create that balance. And we have a lot of righties, so left shot helps balance that out too if you're nitpicky. Yeah, I mean, I think he's 23 as well. He's got a lot of room to grow. I think they'll probably try him on the second pair, but I mean, it'll all depend on what they do with Oliver Kylington as well. There's still question marks there. But yeah, I mean, I heard a lot of rumors that the offer that was on the table previously at the trade deadline for Jacob Markstrom from the New Jersey Devils was nowhere near this one. So I think the patience of Craig Conroy to be able to wait and hold on to Jacob Markstrom and potentially miss out and then get that better deal a couple days ago. That shows a lot of strength on his part.
Mhm.
And yeah, the first, you know, who knows where it'll be. The Devils are going to be a pretty good team, but yeah, overall, I think it was a good deal. Absolutely.
So now going forward, is it Dustin Wolf's net next season, or is it going to be a tandem between Vladar and him? Or are they going to go out and get a goaltender? Was it just moving Markstrom so that Wolf could get that opportunity?
I don't know. I mean, obviously a small sample size that we're all basing our opinions on Dustin Wolf off of. Um, Obviously he's dominated every level he's been to before the NHL, but is he ready for a starter's role? I personally don't think so. You know, I love the guy and I think he has a very bright future, but I don't think Dan Vladar is also the guy to share the crease with. I think we need to make a change and kind of generate either a 1A, 1B option, maybe get a bit of a better goalie that can take time away from Wolf and maybe kind of give him that 40 game mark this year. But I mean, then why trade Markstrom, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could, right? So it's a weird, I don't know the conversations that are going on. I don't know how highly they view Dustin Wolf in the office, obviously pretty high, but I don't think he's ready to take over full-time starting role and play, you know, 50 or 60 games. I think that's pushing it for a 24-year-old, 23-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, he has dominated every other level, but yeah, it is pretty early. We'll see. We'll see if they get a better supporting goaltender for him and maybe a cheaper guy. Maybe that's what they're looking at instead of paying Markstrom so much. We'll see. That's something to watch over the offseason into the next season too. All right, let's talk potential trades now. This is the fun part. And I'll start with you, Jacob. What do you got for a mock trade that could potentially happen on draft day or in the days before here?
Well, I got a few good ones, but one that I feel like has been generating a lot of buzz because I see this name coming up a lot is between Buffalo and the Hurricanes is for Marty Necas, and it's one that I think makes a lot of sense, especially with the recent buzz, especially today with the Sabres potentially buying out Jeff Skinner. They're going to be making more room in their top six. So if they're really pursuing making room in their top six, then it makes sense that they would be pursuing a player like him to add to their top six. And he's a restricted free agent, so he's not signed to a contract right now, so they would have the negotiating rights. But as far as making a move, I think it would be something that they have the assets to actually make the trade with Carolina. And I think it would be a similar trade to one that they made a couple of years ago with Philadelphia with Florida, when they traded Reinhart there. So when they have the assets, they could trade the 11th overall pick along with one of their many prospects. And then they could probably throw in one of their additional roster players, whether it be Yoki Haru's rights, or if they want to add in Peyton Krebs as an additional piece, or if they want to add in Jordan Greenway as an additional piece. There's a couple of other things that they can put into that equation to kind of sweeten the deal, and they have additional picks on top of that, depending on what Carolina is really asking for. But as far as the asking price, I don't think that there's anything that Carolina would be looking for that is ridiculous at this point. that Buffalo wouldn't be able to meet.
Mhm.
So I think Marty Necas would be a great addition. And so long as it's not astronomical, which I don't think it would be at this point, I don't think it would be unrealistic. And I'm not against Buffalo trading 11th overall along with, say, Yuri Kulich, and then you throw in maybe like Matthias Samuelsson on top of that if you really need to make a deal like that happen. You immediately improve the top six, and then you get the type of player that you need. So
Mhm.
that would be one that I think would be a big move for Buffalo, and I think it would be a lot of fun to see it happen.
Yeah.
Might be a bit of an overpayment in some people's eyes, but a big move like that is something that they can afford to make.
Sure. Derek, Jim, what you got any comments on that trade? Is it something that you could see happening? I mean, Necas is probably one of the bigger targets that's out there. Lots of teams talking about him and putting mock trades for him. What do you think about that to Buffalo?
Go
Well,
ahead.
yeah, for Buffalo, I mean that's in your division, conference kind of thing trade again. But if it works out for both teams, I definitely think it's doable. And they're all guys that have been talked about. They're, the buzz around all of that's been and if it happens in any way, shape, or form, again, I think all the scenarios that Jacob threw out there, I imagine, most of them with tweaks of draft picks here and there would probably work out pretty fair. Yeah, and if somebody has to, overpay to, get something done, and you're going to see a lot of that happening up into draft day with teams that have, cap issues. I think they're very logical kind of trades and things that you threw out there. And I could definitely see any one of those or a combination of those happening, on draft night or slightly before.
Yeah, there's lots of things that, like you said, with the 11th overall pick. I mean, the Sabres have so many prospects. They probably should be looking towards pushing what the group that they got over now, and use some of the prospects to, upgrade the team right now, because when you have so many guys and so many assets, you got to start using it at one point. And I think maybe the 11th overall would be something they'd move for sure. All right, Derek, I'll go over to you for a mock trade. What do you got for us to discuss here?
Well, one of the other big names that's available is Patrik Laine of the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I've seen a lot of buzz of him going to the Canadiens, Montreal.
Mhm.
They definitely need the scoring. They finished 26th in goals scored per game. And I think he'd fit right in with that young core of, Caulfield, Suzuki, Slafkovsky, and co. You could put him on the second line with a healthy Kirby Dach and Alex Newhook, that makes for a nice combination. And they have the cap space to fit his full contract if they move Carey Price to LTIR, which is pretty much an inevitability.
Yeah.
And to make things even easier, they could ship Josh Anderson back the other way and give them his $5.5 million contract. He's also struggling and in need of a change. And, why not send him back to the team he once scored 27 goals for in a season, pardon me. So my mock trade is Anderson for Laine straight up, or, maybe Montreal needs to sweeten it a bit and include one of their young defenders. They have a lot of, they're going to have a logjam on the defense core for a while here. So they could get rid of a guy like Jordan Harris, perhaps, who's not as highly viewed as a Hudson or as a Gooley or somebody like that. And then maybe some conditional picks, for performance-based conditional picks for both guys. They kind of might need that sweetening. So I like Laine for Anderson.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happen, especially Josh Anderson's been in the trade rumors the last couple seasons, and his contract's a bit big, but again, Laine's is big too, so it'd be kind of money in, money out type thing. And I think Laine would probably do pretty well in Montreal. I don't know if he, playing on a team that's rebuilding, although he is on one right now. So yeah, lots of teams are gonna be looking at that too. Jacob, Jim, what do you think about that trade there?
Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead,
not sure if
Jacob.
you want to jump in there, Jim. I'll jump in. I mean, as far as Laine is concerned, I always like him as a player, but the injury history at this point is really the only concern. So, I mean, even if you move him to Montreal, you're still sitting there wondering, Is that enough of an issue that is he going to be productive as soon as he gets there? So, um, I don't necessarily see any issues with that type of a trade because you can see mutual benefit from both sides. I like Anderson going the other way. I think it would be a pretty fair deal benefiting both sides. Um, as far as both of them rebuilding, I guess Laine might be hesitant to waive the no trade just for that reason alone. That's the only maybe hiccup I can see in that type of a scenario. But as far as production value, I think there's a lot of things he would like about going there if he doesn't see it as a rebuilding scenario.
Mhm.
So if Montreal convinces him we're on the up and up, we're not actually rebuilding, we actually are a building team, not a rebuilding team. I think that would be the best way for them to kind of convince him to go there and be a part of, being a leader there. I think that would be a cool way to get him back to being that former second overall 40 goal scoring dynamite scoring player that he can be. Because I still like him and what he can do, and I think he can contribute a lot if he goes there.
Mhm. Jim, have anything to add to that one?
No, I agree with the part about Laine. Would he accept, the idea that, well, I'm going to Montreal, who's rebuilding, or are they building? Can they make the playoffs? In next year, in the next couple of years, that might take some convincing. I think that would be the only hiccup. For getting that trade done. Other than that, it would be a really good trade. He would have to see something, or they'd have to talk to him to say, either we'll be there soon, or we're Montreal, come play in one of the great hockey meccas of the world, and
Yeah.
we'll get this going. There's always that. I think Montreal and Toronto and a lot of them original six kind of have a little bit of that advantage sometimes, especially if they're you know on the rise or thought to be on the rise next season. And and we hear the Canadiens aren't done. They might put a few more pieces in there that might make some of those teams that made the playoffs this year start looking behind them and going like, we may have to worry about Montreal.
Yeah. That's true. It depends on what type of moves they make in the offseason because their young guys are pretty good, pretty established now, and they got some additions that are coming up. Slavkovsky's getting better every season, and they're close, I think, to being a playoff contending team. And Laine see it that way? I think that is the biggest thing for sure. All right, Jim, over to you. What trade do you got in mind here?
Well, the trade I got is for a team that is desperately in need of a trade, and that's the Tampa Bay Lightning, because they have a little problem of trying to re-sign Steven Stamkos, and they don't have the money to do it. They have about $5 million in cap space. He already took one hometown discount. I doubt he's going to go from 8.5 to 5 just because it's Tampa, even though he loves Tampa. He said it. His family's there and all of that other stuff, and the great, tax benefits of working and living in Florida helps that out a little bit. But if they want to sign Stamkos, they're going to have to trade somebody. And the three likely names that are being tossed about are Tanner Jeannot, Eric Cernak, and Anthony Cirelli. Jeannot has been floated around to a couple of teams. There's been a few things where he would make he might get a second chance at kind of getting out of that funk with the Blackhawks, who are a young team who could use a forward of his nature. If he got the scoring good, that would be great. It would be an extra large body in there to make sure that people don't bother Connor Bedard. The problem with that is he's only 2.6 on the salary cap. That takes him up to 7 something. They still have to sign more players. And then, you have Cernak. He's another candidate because they traded for Ryan McDonagh last month, and McDonagh's a $6 million salary cap. Cernak's like 5 or something like that. That could do it. And again, there's other destinations of somebody who needs a defenseman. Chicago's being bandied about because they have 1 million draft picks this year.
Yeah.
They're going to be one of the busiest teams, if not the busiest team, in doing it. We get back to that scenario too. A lot of people wondering, are they going to start trading some of those draft picks to get some quality players in that lineup? because how long are you going to let Connor Bedard start losing year after year after year? Will Blackhawk fans be patient with Connor Bedard on a team like Detroit, who hasn't made the playoffs in 7 years? And sorry, I think there's a longer team in here from somebody who covers. Sorry, Jacob, but how
What was that?
patient
You can run that by me one more time, Jay?
how patient will teams be? How patient will Bedard be? He's had some losing teams in juniors, but he's been part of successful Canadian international teams. And for the Lightning players, they probably don't have to give up that much. I don't think they have to give up 18 unless they're going to package like maybe Jeannot and Cernak and a couple of the few draft picks they'd have left for this year and even next year. I see that as being a possibility. Tampa and Chicago have been good trade partners over the last couple of years. The Hagel trade, I think, worked out for both sides. Tampa did, nice by Chicago by taking Seabrook and his salary, off that. So, that got long-term. That didn't hurt him, but it helped Chicago. So, they both have things that they need. The Blackhawks to give Tampa draft picks, and Tampa has some, decent younger quality players that could come in and step and make the Blackhawks instantly better.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that. I see Tampa being very active. You might see 1, 2, trades, on draft day or draft night from them as they try to, free up some salary cap and get some draft capital back.
Mm-hmm. Well, they definitely want to re-sign Stamkos. I don't think they want him going anywhere else because if he does hit the open market, my gosh, how many teams are going to line up for him? And they'll throw the money at him too. I mean, he could get 10+ million. I mean, teams will throw that money at him, even though he is getting up there in age, but still has quite a few years, I think, still in him.
Yeah.
And like you said, that hometown discount, I don't think he's going to take a big discount for this one, right? We'll see. Because if he do it, I think he probably would have re-signed already.
Well, I think the reason why he isn't re-signed is because if they throw out a number, they put them at a disadvantage in the trade because now teams know they have to do it.
True.
So they don't have to offer a lot. I personally think there's something in the works that they say, we have a number agreed to. We just have to get to it with a trade or some other kind of movement. Be patient with us. We're going to get it done, but we're not going to, and they really don't want to, again, talk about overpaying. Trading Jeannot is going to be tough because they paid so much to get him, and he hasn't really, lived up to, even what they thought at a floor that he could do. And injuries have been a little bit of an issue, but I personally think he would be a better fit on another team at this point too.
For sure. And I mean, they definitely need money and they got some guys, like you mentioned, a few names, and they definitely could trade one of them and still be a pretty good team still. So yeah, we'll see we'll have to keep an eye on the Lightning for sure. All right, let's get a couple more trades. Jacob, you have another one for us here?
Yeah, I like I said, I got a lot of these, but one, I'll throw out a double name since they're on the same team. I'll kind of hone in on the Rangers here since Buffalo lacks physicality. A couple of names that I was kind of honing in on. One I was really thinking about, and I won't say it's as a joke. I was thinking about it more just in a simplistic term. The initial name I was thinking about was Matt Rempe, because I thought it would have been just a much more simpler acquisition. But towards the end of the Rangers run in the playoffs, I was really thinking about maybe Buffalo could try and target Jacob Trouba as well. And I was like, what would a trade like that look like? And hypothetically, if Buffalo was trying to make a splash and get both of them, what would that look like? So if they really were serious about trying to become more physical, something like that, they could throw something maybe a little bit more creative at the Rangers if they're trying to to up their physicality. So maybe if they threw Samuelson their way to get the roster defenseman going back the other way, along with one or both of their higher end center prospects in Kulik and Ostlund, or if they wanted a winger instead of another center, they could do Ostlund, Rosen, or Kulik. They could pick two of those three and kind of just pick which one is really the best fit for their system to kind of recuperate some of their prospects to dip into that. And then to maybe offset some of the financial issue that comes with the Trouba contract, throw in Jordan Greenway, and then that also helps with some of the bottom six issues that the Rangers were facing at the end of the playoffs, and it also gets help with some of their defensive issues because Greenway was outstanding last year in the defensive end, even though he was, you know, kind of buried in the Buffalo system, but he was still doing well. And then on the Rempe side, if it was just him, I was saying maybe a third, fourth round pick to kind of jump into that. But it was just a matter of packaging all of these assets together and trying to get him and trying to get these players in there so that you can add Rempe to the bottom six and get him in Lindy Ruff's hands and see what he can really do with a player like him. Just because I genuinely believe if you add some defensive awareness to this kid's game, he's still young. He's still very moldable. He's just a little immature with his game, and he's a good enough skater. He's already physical. He has decent hands, decent puck handling ability. But if you add some defensive awareness to his game, he can be a terrifying bottom six forward. And Lindy Ruff can absolutely do something great with him if you just give him a shot. And then you add Trouba to the Sabres top four crew, put him with Owen Power, and that'll give him some of the most ridiculous amount of space you can possibly imagine. And it just creates a whole new dynamic to that decor compared to what they currently have. It's a whole new look for them making a move like that. I think it's something that's just so completely different from what they were last year compared to what they could be if they make a bold move like that.
For sure. Jim, since you are connected to the Rangers a bit, what do you think about Trouba getting moved and Rempe being in there for the Sabres, and just in general, Trouba being moved, because that has been talked about quite a bit?
Yeah, the Rangers are in a similar situation as the Lightning and some of the other teams. They do have some salary cap issues. I think it's possible if the right combination came about. I don't think they want to move Trouba, but again, it's all about the cap space. I've also heard they're maybe willing to move Capo Caco, and I'm not sure they think that he's done, but I think playing with him as long as they did without him last year and doing as well as they did, they could see him as a movable piece. And again, maybe a change of scenery is better from them. Like New York City's a tough place to play. It may not be as tough as Toronto or some of the Canadian cities, but it's a tough place to play. And not every kid, and I think he's only still 21 or 22. I mean, he would be one I would think, he could end up in Buffalo as well. He's a young player. I don't know if they'd have to give up all that much to him. But he also comes with a lot of NHL games under his belt. He might find some success there or, in some other places. I don't know if New York and Buffalo would do a trade. I mean, same division, but, I think whatever the Rangers are going to have to do to free up cap space, it could happen. Trouba's certainly a possibility. And, a few other, bottom six guys on that roster that have some salary cap, but are still, nicely named players. I think the only one they're taking off the board I haven't heard much about is Lafreniere. I think he had such a bounce back season. I think, okay, we're seeing what we need from him. We're going to keep him, and as far as some of the other ones, not so much.
Yeah, I think Lafreniere is a bit off the trade block now, it seems,
Yeah.
That's
after last
so
year.
unfortunate. I wanted him.
For sure.
I wanted to try and get him last year. Nobody listened to me.
Yeah, I think he's a Ranger now for
And there
sure.
was a lot of talking. I don't know if because of the way he played, there was actually the price. That was some of the things that came afterwards is that um so reportedly the Rangers had some offers, but they weren't, satisfactory to their liking. And part of it is going to make you look bad. You have the first overall pick, and
Yeah,
then you're going to trade a player in a second for him, or like that. That's just not a look that Chris Drury really wanted to have as well. So I think there were two parts to that one.
for sure. All right, Derek, let's finish it off with one more. You got another one for us here?
Oh, I got lots. Yeah, this is the best part of our job. Come on.
Yeah.
Um, so it just came out not too long ago that the Winnipeg Jets and their 2022 first round pick, Rutger McGroarty,
Yes, yeah.
are at an impasse, and they're supposedly shopping him around as he will reportedly not sign with the team. So any trade for him, I mean, essentially it's just Cutter Gauthier 2.0 in my eyes, and it's going to be pretty similar to that, a highly drafted college forward that has no pro experience yet, but immense potential, obviously. And the Jets would probably want a young roster player in return, but I don't view McGroarty as valuable or as highly valued as Cutter Gauthier, so I don't think they
Mm,
would get a Jamie Drysdale-esque player in return. Um, so instead of that, I could see this time around a team trading their first round pick in this draft to acquire him. I think it could be a trade we see on Friday. A team like, I mean, I hate to point out, but Buffalo, like we said earlier, I mean, they have a lot of prospects already. This 11th pick, do we need it? Do we need to make it given what we have? And why not take a player like McGroarty,
mm,
who's you know what you're getting essentially with him. It's bit less of a gamble. He's going to be an effective NHLer. All signs point towards that. But a team like the Devils could also give up the 10th
mm.
pick. Same reason. Why gamble and go with something like that. So I think him for a first happens.
Yeah, I see it too. Jacob, Jim, what do you think about McGroarty? I mean, quickly before we run out of time here. Uh, what do you think about that one? That one's pretty recent. Jacob, I'll start with you there.
I mean, you don't got to sell me on him. I mean, I'd be more than happy to take him in Buffalo system if you're
Yeah.
going to trade 11 for him. Sure. I mean, if you're looking at draft stock, you're only losing a couple of slots, technically, because he was drafted at what, 14, I'm pretty sure back in the day.
Yeah.
So you're not really losing too much draft stock there, and the difference between 11 and like 18 in the draft really isn't that much of a difference as far as player quality goes. So it doesn't really matter. And he's a much more developed prospect than having to wait. So you're just speeding along your development process more than anything. He's a good winger. He's a scoring winger. And that's something that Buffalo could definitely use in their top six sooner rather than later. So if it speeds up the process, sure, absolutely. I'd be happy to take him. You don't got to twist my arm backwards for it. Sure, make the call.
Yeah. Jim, what do you think about McGroarty? Is that something is he going to get moved is the biggest thing.
I think he's probably going to have to if he's making it clear that he's not going to sign with them. Winnipeg and Winnipeg doesn't want to. You don't want to be in a position because now the rest of the teams know where you stand. And again, teams with draft picks like Buffalo, like Chicago, and a whole bunch of other one. I could see him going to Chicago and being
Mm,
part of their young group. Again, they have plenty of picks. They have 18 sitting there. That's a possibility. I'm kicking around ideas and it was going to ask some people, if Winnipeg would be willing to take players.
mm,
Because if Winnipeg wanted to do it, let's ship them off to a team that has some players to do. Like, again, I bring up Tampa because I
yeah.
cover them. Would they be interested in a Cernak or a Janot or even an Anthony Cirelli and, give him away with maybe a couple picks and both sides are happy in that one. So I think there's a bunch of different scenarios and using that, at least, Winnipeg is not married to just getting a draft pick back for him. I think there's a lot of possibilities for both sides to, get a win-win in that trade.
I agree. I think it depends on like if Winnipeg wants to take not just a draft pick. I think that is the biggest thing. But yeah, that's gonna be something to watch too. Lots of stuff, lots of trades that could happen. So we'll just have to see. The draft is just a couple days away as we're recording. But thanks, Derek, Jacob, and Jim for coming on talking trades. We'll have to get on another one after the draft and talk about any ones that did happen, because I'm sure we're going to see some. But make sure to check out everything at thehockeywriters.com, all of our draft coverage. And of course, we'll talk about the trades that happen too. But until our next roundtable, we'll see you next time.